My name is Walter Griggs. I was born in the year 1947 and grew up in the shadowy folds of the Appalachian Mountains on the Tennessee side. Folks always said I had an eye for maps and a knack for seeing patterns where others saw wilderness. That's probably what led me into survey work. Spent over 30 years walking forgotten corners of the country, tracing lines where there weren't roads, measuring silence, learning how the land breathes. These days I live alone in a wooden cabin near the base of an old ridge. No wife, no kids, just a dog that died a decade ago, and the endless whispering of the trees. I've never really told anyone this story. Not because I'm afraid they won't believe me, though I know most wouldn't, but because part of me has always wondered if speaking it aloud would make it real again. As if keeping it quiet kept it buried. But memories have a way of clawing back up when you're old. Dreams bleed into waking hours, sounds echo too long. And lately, I've been hearing things again. The same laugh I heard that day. The same breath. It happened in the summer of 1972. I was 25 years old and had just started my first long-term assignment with the Tennessee Valley Authority. We were tasked with surveying a series of valleys along the Kentucky border. The idea was to lay groundwork for a new electrical corridor, stringing high-voltage lines through some of the most inaccessible parts of the mountains. Our equipment was simple by modern standards. Compasses, theodolites, notebooks, grease pencils, and weathered maps from the 40s and 50s. GPS hadn't even been dreamed of yet, and much of the terrain hadn't been formally surveyed since before the Second World War. There were 4 of us in the crew. Hal Jennings was the lead, mid-50s, tough as railroad spikes, the kind of man who carried a steel flask and read trail signs like scripture. Then there was Jimmy Talbot, a fresh-faced cartographer straight out of college, full of questions and theories. Ray Preston was the quiet one, ex-military, built like a tree stump, always staring just a little too long at the woods like he expected them to blink back. I was the rookie, young, eager, not yet weighed down by years of strange stories and strange places. We were 3 days into the survey when we came across the anomaly. We'd made camp near a low ridgeline, and Jimmy, ever the curious type, was comparing one of the wartime maps to our current grid. That's when he noticed it. A town marked on the old map, labeled Cold Hollow, sitting about 2 miles northeast of our current location. But on our newer documents, from 1969 onward, there was no such town. No roads, no settlement codes, nothing. At first, we figured it was just one of those forgotten communities, the kind that died off when mining dried up or the rail lines moved. Appalachia is full of places like that. Ghost towns swallowed by vines. But Jimmy was persistent, said it didn't make sense that there was zero mention of it in any of the TVA updates. Not even a note about relocation or abandonment. It was as if it had simply been erased. The next morning, curiosity got the better of us. Hal didn't see the harm in taking a detour. 2 miles won't kill us, he said. We packed light and followed an old logging path through a thicket of pines and oaks. The forest was dense, the kind that muffles sound and swallows light, and we had to fight through brambles and half-fallen trees. After about an hour and a half, we came to a clearing, and there it was. A town, or at least the husk of one. About a dozen wooden structures clustered around a sagging dirt road. The architecture was simple, gabled roofs, porches with broken railings, walls weathered to a uniform gray. A small chapel stood at the far end, its steeple cracked like a broken finger. There was no sign of life, no birds, no wind, just a silence so thick it pressed against your eardrums. We moved cautiously, calling out a few half-hearted greetings. No answer. The buildings looked abandoned, but not collapsed. Not rotting the way wood does after decades of exposure. It was more like they had been preserved, kept intact by something unnatural. The first odd thing we noticed was the clothesline. It was strung between 2 posts, sagging slightly under the weight of damp clothes. A shirt, a pair of overalls, and what looked like a child's dress. All 3 swayed gently, though there was no breeze. Hal told us to split up and document the structures. Ray went toward the church. Jimmy moved to what looked like a general store. I took the nearest house, a 2-story frame with peeling white paint and a rusted screen door hanging by one hinge. Inside, it smelled faintly of smoke and something else I couldn't place, a mix of lavender and iron. The living room was neat, almost staged, with a rocking chair turned toward the window and a blanket folded over the armrest. Dust covered everything, but there were footprints in it. Bare footprints. Small ones. Leading from the stairs to the table in the corner. On the table sat a plate. Cornbread. Still warm. I didn't touch it. Something in my gut screamed not to. But the steam rising from it was real. I stepped back, heart thudding in my ears. Then I heard it. A laugh. A child's laugh. High and breathy, like it came from the hallway. I turned sharply, but the hallway was empty. I backed toward the door. The laugh came again, this time from behind me. I spun. Nothing. Then the screen door slammed shut, though I hadn't touched it. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the still air. I don't remember leaving the house. The next thing I knew, I was outside, and the light had changed. The sun was lower. The others were standing in the street, pale and silent. None of us spoke. We just stared at each other for a long moment, like waking from a shared nightmare. When we finally checked our watches, we realized something was wrong. What had felt like 30 minutes had somehow stretched into over 3 hours. We hadn't even noticed. Hal was the first to break the silence. "We're leaving," he said flatly. No arguments, no discussion. We packed up and left the way we came. That night, the air was thick with tension. We didn't speak of what we'd seen. Jimmy looked pale and jittery, his eyes constantly flicking to the tree line. Ray wouldn't even sit near the fire. He just stared into the darkness, as if expecting something to crawl out of it. The next morning, Jimmy was gone. We searched for hours, found his pack, his map, even his canteen, but no sign of him. Eventually, we stumbled across his body in a creek bed nearly 5 miles from camp. His eyes were open, mouth twisted in a silent scream. There were no signs of struggle, no wounds, just that expression. Frozen terror, like he'd died seeing something the rest of us couldn't. The trip ended there. Hal called it in. The agency airlifted us out. The report blamed dehydration, exposure, maybe a fall. But I knew better. We all did. Ray quit the next week, moved south. I heard he took up drinking heavy. Hal never spoke of it again. And me? I stayed on, did my job, tried to forget. But every so often, usually in late summer when the fog rolls in thick and slow through the pines, I hear that laugh again, faint, echoing, like it never left, like it's still waiting. Time passed, as it always does. Decades stacked up like firewood, each one drier than the last. After Jimmy died, I buried that summer deep in the folds of my mind and sealed it shut. Life didn't stop. There was always more work, more hills to climb, more maps to draw. People left, people died, but Cold Hollow stayed frozen in that one moment of my past. A town that never was, a place that never existed, except that I'd been there, and something in me never really came back. For a long time, I didn't dream about it. That's the thing that kept me sane. For a while, I could pretend it was all just a fluke, a crack in my memory. Maybe the heat, maybe the isolation. I told myself stories to cover up the real one. I was good at that. Most people are. But then, a few years after I retired, must have been 2008 or so, I started hearing the laugh again. Not often. Just now and then, usually when the fog was thick and still in the early mornings. At first I figured it was a bird, or my memory playing tricks, or the tinnitus that had been creeping into my ears with age. But it always sounded the same, high, airy, like it was being carried from very far away. And it was always followed by a silence that wasn't just quiet. It was expecting. I tried to ignore it, kept busy with the little routines of old age, fixing broken chairs, watching storms, feeding stray cats that wandered through the yard. But something had changed. The woods felt different, denser, like the trees were leaning closer. The shadows stretched farther. And that laugh, it started coming at night too. Then came the letter. No return address, just a small yellowed envelope tucked under the doorframe one morning. My name written on the front in faded ink. Inside was a page torn from an old topographical map, a very specific quadrant, one I recognized instantly. It was the Cold Hollow Ridge. But here's the thing. The town was marked on it again. Same size, same label. A perfect circle around a spot that, on every known modern map, was nothing but trees. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? I didn't have friends left, not really. The men who were with me that summer were all gone or lost to time. I sat with the map on my table for days, just staring at it, remembering. Then, after a week, I packed a bag. Not because I wanted answers, not even because I was brave. It was something else, like a hook in the chest, pulling. I was 72 years old, and I felt like if I didn't go now, that place would never let me die. It would keep laughing, closer and closer, until I ended up like Jimmy, mouth frozen open, screaming at something no one else could see. The drive took me most of a day. I followed the same logging roads as before, though most of them had collapsed into gullies or were choked with thorn. My old truck could only take me so far. After that, I walked. It was early September, and the air had that heavy, wet stillness just before the leaves change. I didn't bring GPS. I didn't want it. I followed the paper map, the same map from the envelope, and trusted my legs to remember the way. It was strange. My body ached with every step, but I never once felt lost. By late afternoon, I reached the ridgeline. The light shifted. That's always the first thing. The colors got flatter, like the air had turned thick enough to dim the sun. The birds stopped. No wind. Just that same impossible stillness I'd felt half a century ago. I walked down into the hollow, and there it was. Unchanged. Not older. Not collapsed. The same damn buildings. The chapel with its broken steeple. The houses with their sagging porches. The same shirt on the same clothesline, swaying just slightly, though nothing moved the trees. I stood there for a long time, not breathing. I think I expected it to disappear or fade or dissolve in front of me like a mirage. But it didn't. It just waited. So I walked in. The gravel crunched beneath my boots. That sound echoed too loud, like everything else had been muted. I passed the general store. Its windows were dirty, but not broken. Inside, I could still see cans on the shelves, neat little stacks untouched by time. I passed the house I'd entered back in 1972. My hands shook when I touched the doorknob. It was cold, too cold. I pushed the door open. Inside, it was exactly as I remembered. Same rocking chair, same folded blanket, same footprints in the dust, and on the table, another plate of cornbread, still warm. I didn't move. I just stood there, heart pounding in my ears. And then I noticed something new. There were photographs on the wall, black and white, faded. But one of them showed me, young, standing with Jimmy and Hal and Ray, our crew, our faces. But none of us had taken that photo. None of us had ever had a camera that summer. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it again. The laugh. louder this time, closer, like it was in the room with me. I stepped outside, blinking hard. The sky was dim, like dusk had come early. I looked around, and the town felt fuller somehow, as if more houses had appeared at the edges, beyond where I remembered. Shapes moved behind curtains. Faint footsteps echoed from places that should have been empty. I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs felt rooted. And then suddenly, I was back on the trail. I don't remember how. No transition. Just one heartbeat, I was in the hollow. The next, I was halfway up the ridgeline, coughing, shaking. It took me a full day to get back to the truck. When I turned the key, the radio crackled to life on its own. I hadn't touched it. It was tuned to static. But beneath it, just faintly, I heard the same laugh. I drove home in silence. Since then, things haven't been right. My clocks run slow. Shadows in the corners of my vision linger a little too long. Sometimes I'll wake in the middle of the night and find dirt on my boots, even though I haven't gone outside. The photo from the wall in that house? It's on my kitchen counter now. I didn't bring it. I would have remembered. And the laugh? I hear it almost every day now. I've started seeing the town in my dreams again. But it's not the same. It's growing, spreading. The streets are longer, the houses newer. There are lights in the windows now. I think it wants me back. Or maybe I never left. I'm writing this down because I know what comes next. I've seen the signs. I've felt the pull. And I don't think I'll be here much longer. If someone finds this, if you're reading these words, don't go looking for it. Don't follow the maps. Don't chase the silence. Because Cold Hollow is still there. And it remembers you. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe, like the video, and stay tuned. We're not saying goodbye yet.